Kelly Ripa, host of Live with Kelly and Mark, was stuck over the weekend. She talks about how her encounter made her panic. An outage causes chaos. Kelly Ripa, host of Live with Kelly and Mark, discusses how the problem started on Friday and how they continued into the weekend. On Friday, several people witnessed a concerning incident in which a malicious code caused certain communications to go offline. Unquestionably, the global tech outage caused by CrowdStrike disrupted jobs and lifestyles all over the world. For example, a number of businesses and services from a broad range of industries were impacted. In addition, the chaos resulted in issues with flight grounding, the shutdown of several media sites, and the outage of hospital and financial systems. Kelly, however, was traveling during the outages and experienced the consequences directly. Kelly Ripa found herself trapped. Kelly Ripa reminisces on her crazy weekend excursion after making it home safely. She exclaims, "Oh my God, it was crazy. I had an exciting weekend of travel." She thinks back on her chaotic period and her sense of being stuck. She went to see her niece at the start of her journey. She even shared a post about going to her freshman orientation. But when Kelly had to go to Georgia to visit another niece, things took a turn for the worst. Her plans were disrupted by the tech outage at that point. Kelly got caught up in the chaos when CrowdStrike published an upgrade that caused numerous systems to fail. She was at the University of Minnesota with one niece, but she was unable to secure a flight to help her other niece get ready for college in Georgia. She said on Live Monday that when Mark asks the audience, she doesn't have to see herself in the room. Rather, she was directly impacted by the fallout from the faulty update when the glitch occurred. She was in the adjacent room, she informs Mark. Kelly Ripa is crazy. Kelly Ripa is questioned by Mark Consuelos over the wild incident. What were the attitudes in the room? He asks. Were folks in a panic? Kelly pauses, admitting, but responds, "I was freaking out." Then she goes on to explain, "I had to fly to Georgia to pick up my other niece after the freshman tour at the University of Minnesota." Mark responds, "Yeah," while listening carefully and a little restlessly. "So, as it turns out, there was no way to get there at all," Kelly adds. Mark laughs a little, and Kelly continues, "But it all worked out. In the end, everything was okay. But it." Mark steps in. "I know," he says. "I was anticipating your return home." He acknowledges that it was awful by shaking his head. In her own words, "Oh, I came in hot. I came in hot," she says, repeating but mocking her responses. "I was upset because there were no lights on." However, following her awful flying experience, Mark abruptly requests permission to depart the nation, diverting her attention from her difficult weekend. It was supposed to be a smooth, uneventful morning for Live with Kelly and Mark. But if there's one thing fans know about Kelly Ripa, it's that chaos seems magnetically drawn to her. Whether it's on the set, in her home, or halfway across the city, something always finds a way to go spectacularly wrong. And this time, it was no different. The day started early. Kelly Ripa was on her way to the studio for a special outdoor segment of Live being filmed in Central Park. She'd left her Manhattan apartment in what she called her comfy pre-show chic outfit, an oversized hoodie, leggings, and a baseball cap pulled low over her face. The city was quiet, the sun barely peeking over the skyline. Kelly, running on coffee and adrenaline, was ready to charm the audience as always. But then, everything went wrong. "I swear, this could only happen to me," she later told viewers, throwing her hands up in dramatic disbelief during the show. "You know how they say New York never sleeps? Well, apparently my driver did." Kelly's car, her usual black SUV, had broken down on a narrow street in Midtown. The driver, mortified, had stepped out to check the engine, leaving Kelly in the backseat alone as taxis honked furiously around them. "I was just sitting there like, okay, any minute now this will fix itself," she explained. Spoiler alert, it did not fix itself. When she realized the car wasn't going anywhere, Kelly made the bold decision to walk the rest of the way to the park. It wasn't far, maybe a mile, but in true New York fashion, It started to drizzle the moment she stepped out. And Kelly Ripa does not do drizzle. I looked like a damp raccoon, she confessed, laughing at herself. I had mascara running down my face, my hoodie was plastered to my head, and my sneakers were squeaking like I'd stepped into a puddle the size of Lake Michigan. As if that wasn't bad enough, her phone battery was hanging by a thread. She tried to call the producers, but the call dropped. She texted Mark, her husband and co-host, but he was already at the park, mixed up in dealing with pre-show chaos. I was basically stranded in the middle of Manhattan with no umbrella, no working phone, and a half-eaten granola bar, she recounted. It was like Survivor, Upper East Side edition. Passers-by began to recognize her despite the hoodie and the chaos. A few fans approached her for selfies, which she graciously agreed to, though she later joked that those photos should never see the light of day. Meanwhile, back at Live, the producers were in panic mode. Mark Consuelos was pacing near the set, asking anyone who would listen, "Has anyone heard from Kelly? She was supposed to be here 20 minutes ago." One crew member tried to reassure him, saying, "She's probably grabbing a coffee," but Mark wasn't convinced. He knows his wife, and if she was late, something had gone wrong. Then, just when everyone had started to assume the worst, a drenched and frazzled Kelly Ripa came speed-walking down the path toward the set. She was clutching her cap, muttering to herself, and yelling, "Don't start without me." The audience, many of whom had gathered early for the outdoor taping, erupted in laughter and applause. Kelly's dramatic entrance was pure television gold. She looked like she'd just wrestled a hurricane, one audience member later said. But she still had that Kelly energy. It was hilarious. Once she was safely under the tent and handed a towel, Kelly finally caught her breath and immediately began retelling the story to everyone who would listen. "I'm stranded, soaked, and running late," she said, gesturing wildly as Mark handed her a cup of coffee. "And this guy on the street says, 'Hey, aren't you Kelly Ripa?' I go, 'Not today, I'm a gremlin from the sewer.'" Mark couldn't stop laughing. "You always say you want more adventure in your life," he teased. Well, the city delivered. Kelly shot him a mock glare. Adventure, yes. Public humiliation, no. Throughout the rest of the episode, the story became a running joke. The crew replayed footage of her soggy arrival and even added comical sound effects for good measure. Kelly leaned into the humor, cracking self-deprecating jokes and calling it the most New York morning ever. But behind the laughter, fans could tell it genuinely shook her up. Kelly later admitted that she had a brief mini freakout in the middle of the street. "I was standing there with traffic all around me, my phone dying, and I thought, this is how it ends. I'll never make it to my own show," she told viewers. "I actually said out loud, 'Help me, universe,' which is something I swore I'd never say outside of a yoga class." Mark chimed in, grinning, "That's when the universe sent a light drizzle to calm you down." Kelly rolled her eyes. "The universe sent me a rainstorm and a city bus that nearly splashed me to death." By the end of the show, Kelly had fully embraced the ordeal as another chapter in her long history of live TV mishaps. Fans online couldn't get enough. Only Kelly Ripa could turn being stranded in the rain into prime entertainment, one fan tweeted. "She's such a New Yorker, complaining the whole time but never giving up," another wrote. Even Mark joined in the fun, posting a photo on Instagram of Kelly holding a towel and coffee with the caption, "She made it. Barely." The comments were filled with laughing emojis and messages from fans praising her for showing up despite the chaos. Later that evening, Kelly gave her followers a behind-the-scenes look at her soaked outfit on her Instagram story. "These sneakers will never recover," she joked, zooming in on the waterlogged shoes. "A moment of silence, please." But perhaps the most relatable part of her story came when she admitted what had truly freaked her out, the loss of control. "I like to think I'm chill," she said in her podcast later that week. "But when things go off script, I panic. I had this moment where I thought, what if I don't make it on time? What if the show goes on without me? And then I realized, that's okay. The world doesn't end if Kelly Ripa is late. Still, she couldn't resist adding with a grin, but let's not make it a habit. The next day, as a joke, the producers placed an emergency poncho, portable charger, and granola bar on her dressing room table with a note. In case of future stranding, Kelly laughed so hard she nearly cried. On air, she proudly displayed her new survival kit, quipping, "I'm prepared for anything now. Rain, snow, traffic, bring it on." Mark raised an eyebrow and said, "Until the next drizzle." "Exactly," Kelly replied. "Then I'm calling an Uber helicopter."